Wow, Julian. I didn't know we went through all that, Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming out this evening. It's amazing to see you all here, and thank you for coming out to support the Risk Review. It's been a long time coming, and like Julian said, I'm a risk taker. I don't do things by the book. Maybe that's why I got arrested. So today is all about taking things to the next level, really. And that's why I came up with this. And I just don't want to do this for myself. I want to influence people. That's my goal, to influence people positively, obviously. And this evening is about that. And also I want to thank my friends here. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, it took me about 3 months or less than that to get these guys together. And one thing I believe is when you put your ideas out there and you start to take action, everything starts to flow. So tonight is not about just sitting down and being comfortable in your box, that box you're sitting or whatever it is you do. You need to do things. This idea came just a few months ago, and now we're here, and we're going to take this a lot further. So I'm not going to talk too long. I'm going to get into this. If we get the next slide up, please. What is the risk review? It's simple, really simple things that makes a big difference. It's based on 4 simple concepts, so 4 simple principles. First is that you're with the risk. We've been taught that risk is something negative. That risk is something that if it happens, it could potentially have a negative or positive outcome. But that's not it. That's the external. When you think about risk in that term, you're thinking externally. You're not thinking about the most important thing, and that's yourself. So today I'm here to tell you that you are all the risk. You are the risk. So think about yourself as the risk. And what that does, it's pretty much a mental thing where you start to think, oh, okay, if I'm the risk, then what am I going to be? A good risk or a bad risk? And it's as simple as that. Next is that your mindset is your biggest asset. A lot of us have been raised in several cultures and things like that. And, we've grown up from different backgrounds, and those things pretty much influence us. Now, are we going to stay in that mindset and not grow? We have to grow. So your mindset is not defined by your background or your environment. You can take steps beyond that. And I've been doing that in the last few months and the last few years. And how am I doing that? Well, I've got my coach here today. So he's been influencing me in a progressive mindset. And we can move forward from wherever we are today. Next is that, the things around you, people around you, your inner circle influence you. So who's in your inner circle? What's in your inner circle? I like that. Well, what kind of friends? Good ones? Or the ones that influence you negatively? So that's important, that the people around us, actually influences us in the right direction. And finally, risk is a life science. It's everything we do. Really, it's everything we do. Because if we're the risk, then you are everything you do. Next slide, please. So, what's my mission, or what's our mission with the Risk Review? This is to make risk applicable for all. When you all have heard about risk, most of you have heard about risk in terms of the fact that it's mainly in your places of work. I see everyone here in suits and nice dresses. You're probably coming from some FTSE 100 company or whatever, and you're told that risk is something that impacts business. No, it impacts human lives as well. And also it's applicable to small businesses, to independents, to freelancers. And that's what I'm about to do. I'm here to make risk applicable to all. And as Julian rightly pointed out, yes, also schools as well, because the mindset needs to be reversed. What do I mean by that? By the time someone graduates from school, the first time they probably know anything about risk is at work. It's too late then. Maybe if the reverse was the case, that it was done in schools, some of the failures we've had in our economy, in life, in systems would not happen. Lehman Brothers is gone. Who knows who's going to go next? That could impact our lives. So what I've done today is, pretty much, get everyone here, who is going to support me to talk about the various aspects of we being the risk that influences us. Next slide. And what's that? So personal branding, how do we project ourselves? Linda's going to talk about that. And I don't know if most of you might know Linda. She's, from Sky News, Fox News, CNBC, and all that stuff. So well, who else to bring on board? Linda. Social media. So how do you project your social media? How do you project your personal brand through social media? Well, Candice is here. She's going to help you. And feel free to ask her questions after and all that stuff. And, she's going to, you got something to show us, haven't you? Okay, cool. She's got some trick that will help you, increase your visibility on LinkedIn. Networking. Oh my goodness, John. So John reached out, to me when he saw the post about the risk review, and he said to me, dude, I want to work with you. That's what he said, yeah. And he wants to help, grow this risk review, mindset, that part of the UK. So he's going to talk about how we can use networking to create opportunities for ourselves. And then, obviously, when you network, for your business, you need money. How do you use your money? Augusta is here to help with that, So look forward to Augusta. And we have the Roslin boys. Oh my goodness, these guys are like brothers to me. And they did something really amazing. Started a new business and they didn't take no prisoners. We'll talk about that later. And finally, Gary, I'll say no more. And with everything, really, seriously, when we do all these things to enhance ourselves, to acquire success and all that stuff, what do? We want to give back. We want to find some way of sharing what we gain. There's a common saying, I can't remember where I heard this, when you clench your fist, you don't receive, but when you open up, you receive as well. So as you give, you open and you receive. And I've got Carly here. Where's Carly? Carly, where are you? Raise your hand. So she just popped out. Anyway, so Carly is from Best Beginnings. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is to find a way to give back. And I've tried to identify the number of charities to work with. But I was at an event a few weeks ago at a book launch, actually, and I heard the charity speak. Alison is not here. She's the CEO and founder of the charity. And she spoke about what they did and how they help families of low income deal with issues around infant mortality and the strategy and how they've done that. And that was amazing to me because there was a long-term strategy to really help people and see results. And she invited me to the office and I saw data and all that stuff and I thought, okay, this is the kind of charity I want to work with. So Carly is going to talk about what they do and how we can also support this charity. And by the way, they are a charity for the night, not just for the night, for the future. So please, support our charity for the night. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to bring Linda on stage. Please, a warm welcome for Linda.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Good evening. Very nice to see everyone. As I pulled up in the taxi this evening, I suddenly remembered I have in fact been here once before when I was a 23-year-old reporter on the Daily Mail and I was reporting the World Tiddlywinks Championships. It took me a while before I got to the Berlin Wall and Tiananmen Square, I can tell you. But I'm talking now about personal branding, and I think perhaps the word that's also applicable here is reputation. I don't really think you can build anything without building a reputation, and your personal branding is just the outward reflection of the reputation that you develop. Now, I think I knew very early on that I was a risk taker. Even as a 15, 16, 17-year-old girl, I knew always that in life I would regret the things I didn't do, not the things I did do. So I was always instinctively prepared to fail. In fact, I didn't really characterize it as failure. I characterized it as a kind of learning opportunity that would lead me on to a success in the future. And I didn't realize, actually, that this concept had been crystallized and was partly being delivered in schools until my daughter got her A-level results recently, and she'd worked very, very hard, and she got very good grades. She got 2 A stars and an A, and she's just started studying architecture at Edinburgh University. And she put it down to growth mindset, and that was taught to her from year 7 at school. And that's really about how to build resilience, how to take risks and not be frightened of taking risks. And her school encouraged her and all of her classmates to do exactly that. Now, I realise now that I was doing that. It's just I went to a very, old-fashioned school. It was a different generation. We weren't taught to do it, but nevertheless, I have done it. So I started as a very young reporter on the Western Mail in Cardiff. I was 19 years old. I left home to go to live in a city I'd never lived in before, not to go to university, but to start work. And that stood me in good stead. It was the reason why I found getting a staff job on the Daily Mail relatively straightforward. It was because I'd worked for a publication that had a very strong reputation. In fact, when I got my job, I think I was 23, my staff job at the Daily Mail, I was the first person to be given a staff job in 3 years and the first woman to be given a staff job in 5 years. So it was a very, very rough and tumble situation where Fleet Street was still physically in Fleet Street, and every day was a risk. Quite frankly, every single day you went to work, you never knew whether you would bring home the bacon at the end of the day and get a byline or a page lead or just fail. So I grew up in a culture that actually failing was normal, and that helped me build a lot of resilience. So when I went to Sky News, when it launched, and I was in with the bricks at Sky News, there on launch night with Rupert Murdoch in the gallery in front of me, although it was a completely terrifying experience, and I'd only had 2 weeks practice after leaving the Mail on Sunday, it didn't seem so bad to me, and I'd never regretted the feeling of power I had from being able to take the risk. Not the feeling of power I had from being successful, but the power I felt because I could push myself, because I could drive myself despite the consequences. And actually, I still remember now, it's coming back to me, the awful reality was at midnight, I was the last person on because I was the least experienced. I fell off air, that's what we say when someone carries on talking even though they've done the count and you've gone to black and you're still talking to an audience of no one. I left Sky and I became a foreign correspondent in Asia. I was the bureau chief of Fox News in Hong Kong. That was another risk. Working for Fox was an extremely risky proposition, come to think of it, but it all went well. And in a way, covering those really big foreign stories like the overthrow of President Suharto and the death of Deng Xiaoping, the Hong Kong handover, they gave me a lot more resilience as well. And when I came back to this country, I started working on Tonight with Trevor McDonald for 7 years. And that was a very enjoyable period of time. I travelled all over the world again. I covered the bombing of the Twin Towers in New York. I'd originally gone over actually to cover a story about cosmetic cowboy surgeons in Miami. And they used to tease me at work. They used to say, Linda, you really need to pack a set of scrubs in your overnight bag because you're constantly filming some kind of operation that's gone wrong, sort of Nurse Doobly. Anyway, I covered all these stories and then I finished up at ITV and I set myself up as a consultant, a communications consultant. And I did media training, I still do, and presentation coaching. I've lately done the chief economist at Spotify, and I'm about to do the senior people at Ovarian Cancer Trust, and after that I'm going to be doing the UN Women UK. All of that involved little risks, and even though people will say to me, well, you know, you were in Bosnia during the conflict, and you've been under fire in Indonesia, etc., water cannon, you know, in the streets of Jakarta. Those to me were all manageable risks. The time when I took the really, really big risk was 18 months ago when I launched my own magazine. And that's because I found the transition from being a journalist to being a publisher difficult but fairly straightforward. But the transition to being a businesswoman, for me, is much, much harder. The sense of responsibility you have to maintain cash flow, to generate your own leads, to build a strategy, and just to really have the guts to say, look, here I am and this is my proposition. Especially a magazine, when your face is in it, it reflects your identity, your thoughts, your principles, is a very, very big risk. And it happens that that can be such a big advantage if you've handled life in the right way before. So I say to people when I coach them in terms of whether they've got a media appearance or they're making a public speech, know your audience, know your story, but know yourself. That's the most important thing, to know yourself, know what you can do, know what you can't do, and then push beyond what you know you can do, and build a solid personality. So sometimes when I do personal coaching, I divide it into 4 segments. I talk about work, I talk about developing an advanced hobby. I like local history and studying genealogy, so this morning I was at the National Archive in Kew, looking around all the fusty bits of paper and the massive medieval books and things like that. Have a serious advanced hobby. Support a charity, that's incredibly important for your personal development, and never neglect your family. That's fundamentally important to me. I'm fortunate enough to have 3 children, even though I had such a disruptive job. And I think that's very important because that foundation gives you the strength and the power to move forward. So when it came to launching the magazine, I knew I could rely on my own personality, and I had to, because some people can get a bank loan, some people can go to investors, some people can ask family and friends, but really I only had me, my business partner, and our contacts in Richmond, which is where we launched the magazine, where I lived. I knew that I'd worked for Shooting Star Chase, I'd worked for the Victoria Foundation, another charity. I was a trustee for the campaign to protect rural England, London. I had political contacts, I had social contacts, all of whom I bored rigid and pressurised them into taking adverts in the magazine, which provided my cash flow. And then I went to my friends in newspapers, to Anne Ashworth at the Times, Nick Helen at the Sunday Times, Nicola Hill at Sky News, and I asked them to just keep writing copy for me, which is what happened. So I've maintained cash flow. I broke even on the 3rd edition. We've made different changes to the magazine, but at the end, it wasn't such a risky proposition because I could rely on some of the things I had developed for myself, about myself. And I guess that's the message I'm trying to get over, is that someone once told me that being a really good entrepreneur was all about risk minimization. And I think that's very true. I think you can minimize the risk that you may present. That's what you have to concentrate on. You have to minimize the risks, the problems that you know you're going to come up with. And basically, it goes back to having what my daughter was talking about on the morning of the exam results, growth mindset. It's about being resilient and being able to push forward. Because that 20% rule, I forget who mentioned it, I think that's Pareto's rule actually, where 80% of the wealth in a country is earned by 20% of the people. In fact, you can apply that to a lot of stuff. It's 20% doing that and 80% kicking the can down the road. But so you don't want to be kicking the can down the road, basically. You want to be in that 20%, and it's not that difficult. It's about resilience and confidence and self-esteem, and that's not that difficult. So, I don't know how long I've been speaking for. I guess that's about 15 minutes, is it? I'm not quite good at counting myself down after years of practice. So, if there's anyone there that wants to ask me any questions, I'd be delighted to answer. So, does anyone have any questions? Oh. I wanted to be, when I was about 15, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I did theatrical costume design, actually, from my A-level. And I got a place at the London College of Fashion. I was with you when I got it. I just got an email about an hour ago joining me up to the alumni for the London College of Fashion, just half an hour ago. So I went there when I was 18, and I originally wanted to go to do fashion journalism, to do fashion design, saw a course in fashion writing, swapped over to that. I read Evelyn Waugh's Scoop, I don't know if anyone's read that, and the book I still have in my cupboard, Harold Evans' Newsman's English. Harold Evans was the legendary insight editor of the Sunday Times. And I swapped over to news. I remember getting Willing's press guide. I got the names of 76 newspapers out of the guide. I wrote to all of them. I had interviews for only about 4 of them probably, and then I got 2 job offers. I took the Western Mail in Cardiff and packed my bags and got on the train. So the answer was I actually wanted to be a fashion designer to start with, and somehow ended up in a ditch in Bosnia. And some very unsavoury things, and there are some stories I can tell you about being in Fleet Street. Goodness me. Anyway, is that a question?
You made the switch to owning your own magazine. Half the time, when you come up with these ideas, you might think, oh, this is a brilliant idea, I need to do this. And how did you fact check this? How did you go from thinking, oh, I'm in a comfortable job, I'm making however much money, I'm comfortable at the moment, how do I make this transition to this extremely risky thing that I'm about to do?
I think part of it goes back to what I was saying about you only regret the things you don't do, not the things you do. But I wouldn't have said I was in a particularly comfortable position before I took the risk, because I've never felt as though I'm in a comfortable position, quite frankly. I've spent half my working life thinking I'm sitting on a knife edge. What I would say to anyone is that it's not enough to really, really love something and make a business out of it. You've got to study the numbers. You've got to do a lot of research. You've got to find out, is the demand there? Can I generate enough cash out of this? And can I really build a business? Can I instigate cash flow? So it's fine to say, you know, I want a lovely magazine, and I've got a lovely magazine, and there's lots of really interesting things in it. And sure, that's fine. That's really entertaining, and that keeps me going. But I've also got to have an eye on my 36-month financial trajectory. So I have to know how much money I'm going to earn every month. I have to know what my fixed costs are. I have to know how far I can push advertisers in order to get revenue. So I think the critical thing is, do you have the stomach for business? And do you want to take a risk? And once you've said, I want to take a risk, then you have to set about minimizing that. And one of the best ways of minimizing risk going into business is for you to become a very strong, reputable person. Or I assume you already, of course you already all are. Does that answer the question? Yeah, okay. Yeah, go on, lady in the orange dress.
Hi, my name is Catherine Dixon, professional.
And the head office was in New York. So I built the bureau, I employed the tape editor, the cameraman, the producer, and I put all the machinery in and all the hardware, the equipment. So in a sense, it was my little kingdom. And at the time when Fox first launched, it was much, much more like CNN and Sky. It was more of a 24-hour news rolling channel. That's not the situation now. We all know that Fox has become like a visual talk radio, if you like. So I didn't have to confront some of the risks that people see now. But actually, I just thought, there's loads of good stories out here. It's a pivotal moment in history for Asia. I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to produce really good stories. I'm going to ignore the kind of external risks that are surrounding. It's a startup. That's the 3rd startup I've done. I've done Sky News, CNBC Asia and Fox News. I'm going to ignore those risks and I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to take out of this what I can take out.